In the last tutorial where we installed and set up our VS Code, yeah, you should have your VS Code open right now. I'm gonna click on the Explorer, and I have my folder open. I called my folder Pythons. If you don't know how to do it, please watch the previous video. Towards the end, I showed you how to launch VS Code and open the folder where you want to house your scripts. So we're going to create a new Python script, and we call it hello world.py. Remember, we use the .py extensions to indicate that this is a Python file. So we're just going to write print hello world. And I also taught you what extension to include so you could get this execute button. I told you to install the Python extension for VS Code, and it will enable you to have you install this extension by Microsoft, and it will let you have this execute button. So I'm just going to press the execute button. It's going to run the script. You could see on my terminal. Again, to open the terminal, you click here and new terminal, and that's going to open the terminal for you. So you could see it shows hello world in the terminal, because this is called a function. It's a built-in function by Python, so it's part of the Python standard library. Now you don't need to worry about what functions are. We're going to look into it in the future. Now I just want you to write your first script and get your hand dirty by writing this, and within the parentheses, whatever you put in here is going to be displayed in the console when you run your code. So we've written our first Python scripts. Now let's look at some basics with Python. Let's say everybody makes mistakes, right? So let's look at what errors look like. Let's say you wanted to run this script and you got into an error. So let's look at what errors are. So basically there are two types of errors. You have syntax errors and runtime errors. So basically what a syntax error is, in loose term, a syntax error is some piece of code that's not allowed by the Python language. That's a syntax error. So let's create an error. Let's say I remove this here and save it. Now if I run this script, it says syntax error. You can see here, it says here syntax error, undetermined string literal, detected at line 1. It also tells you what line the error is coming from, so you can easily go and see, okay, my line 1 is an error. Our VS Code already sees that it's an error because we have the Python extension installed, so it also notices that, hey, there's an error here. So if you fix this error, everything goes away. If you run your script, you see it runs properly here. So let me clear this. Okay, now let's look at what a runtime error looks like. So let's say we write print and then we say hello world, right? You can still see our IDE because we have that extension in. It's already telling us this is wrong. If we run this, you will see it creates a traceback which says print hello name error. It calls it a name error. Name hello is not defined. So what happens is that's called a runtime error. So these are errors which are caught when you're running your Python script, and Python now will raise the error and stop executing the program. So the text that you get displayed for an error is called a traceback. The traceback gives you some useful information about your error. You can see there's a traceback. It gives you information about your error. Like we are able to see, it's a name error. Hello is not defined. Now we are going to look into these in further videos. Now the next thing I want us to cover is creating our variables. Now let's just go ahead and fix this and just put this in quotation so it's proper. Good. Let's look at variables now in Python. Let me clear this up. So in Python, variables keep values accessible. So a variable, just the way to look at a variable is it's a bucket which holds a value, any value you want, and you will create a variable for two main reasons. One is to keep your values accessible, and the other reason is to give context to some value. For example, the number 28 could mean whatever, or it could mean a student's number in the class or whatever, or someone's age. It could mean a lot. So you would create a variable in order to kind of give context to it and also to hold it. So in case you want to use, let's say you have a student's age and you want to use it in multiple places in your program. Rather than writing the age constant, you could just use a variable. So whenever you change the age, it changes everywhere in the code. Okay, and the way we create the variable is with an assignment operator. You use an assignment operator. So you give a name for the variable. Let's call this age, and we use an assignment operator. This is an assignment operator, and we assign it to a value. Let's say 28. Now we know that age is 28 because we've assigned 28 to the variable named age. Now if we print age and we run this code, you will see in our console we have hello world, which is the first print statement right here, and we have the age, which is what we said here, print age. So if I change this to, let's say 35, 36, and I run this code, we see age 36 here, down here. So you could this is how you create a variable. You can also create a variable x equal to 15, y equals to 10, and we could even perform basic operations with that. So like I said, this is an assignment operator. You have different operators in Python. You have, this is an addition operator, the plus symbol. So I could say age plus x, and if you run this code, what displays here is 51. If you can see here, 51. So this is how variables are assigned. In Python, when you want to name your variables, let's say you want to name a variable, the way to go is you could use uppercase letters from A to Z, lowercase letters from A to Z, numbers from 0 to 9, and underscores. Basically, you can use these characters to name your variable. So, but you cannot start your variable name with a number. So you cannot say 1 age. This is wrong in Python, but you can say age and 1. Okay, now this is okay, it's a variable, and you could do that. You could do it, but if you start with a number, it's gonna throw an error because in Python you don't name your variables, you don't begin your variable names with a number. And it's always advisable in Python to name your variables using what's known as snake case. This is snake case. This is a snake case variable. Okay, this here is a snake case variable because it has this underscore between it. In Python, it's always advisable to name your variables like that, and lowercase, or when you name them with uppercase, let's say this, we use this when we want to name a constant variable in Python. Like based on best practices, right? You will use capital letters when you're naming a constant, which is a variable you don't want to change in your code. Okay, variables are also case sensitive. So if you say age equal to, let's say 44, and you come here and you say age equals to 33, these are two separate variables, right? So even if I want to call age and I say age with the capital letter, it's going to throw an error. Like if I run this code, it's going to tell me no, it's going to give you an error because it doesn't know what age is. Okay, so now that we've learned about assignment operators and we've assigned some stuff, we've written some assignments here, we've written age 36, and we could create name Jane Doe. Now that we've written these variables, let's look at leaving yourself notes in your program. So at times you might write code and it's been several months since you wrote the code, and you try to look at the program and you're like, what the heck did I do here? And even descriptive variable names might not help you. So it can be a little difficult to remember code you wrote a long time ago if you haven't looked at it. Or let's say you want to share code with someone else in your team or a friend, and the person comes and looks at your code and they don't understand what's going on. So for that, you will need to leave comments right within your code. And basically, the most common way to do a comment in Python is by using the pound symbol in front. In a new line, you do a pound symbol, and whatever you write, Now this is a comment. This is a comment, right? This is a comment in Python. This is how you do a comment. This is called a block comment, right? This here is called a block comment, and you could do several of those. There's another comment, and then you could write whatever you want to write. So basically, what comments are is comments are a way for you to like describe what your code is doing. You know what a piece of code is doing in your program. So and also your comments are ignored by the Python interpreter. So comments are not executed. So if I run this code, it's still just gonna print out hello world, regardless of whatever I've written here. Like even if I say print this will, if I could type not run, if we run this code here, it still just shows you hello world, and that's because this is a comment, so it knows not to read it. So comments do not affect how your scripts run. So we could also do what is known as an inline comment, right? So we could create a variable called email and say, you could do this, and then you could create an inline comment like this. You do the pound after your code and say, this is an inline comment. So this is an inline comment, right? Still, if you run it, it doesn't affect your code, still prints this out. And basically, this is how you do comments in Python. So you can do inline comments and block comments. Now, let's recap what we've learned. We've introduced three basic concepts in Python. We've introduced what variables are. And we learned that variables give names to values in your code using the assignment operator. We learned that there are errors such as syntax and runtime errors, which are raised by Python when it can't execute your code, and they are displayed in your IDLE's interactive window in the form of a traceback. We learned about comments, and we learned that comments are lines of code that don't get executed, and they serve as a documentation for yourself or other programmers that need to read your code. So those are the things we've learned.